Good evening. Good evening and welcome to another Monday Night Live at Cafe Gratitude. Yay! I watch these videos and it's all you see is me going, yay. Did you guys know I was the speaker tonight? Yeah. And you still came? Where were you last week? We had a food demo. Melissa Mango was here, busting out the nut-free chocolate. Raining, right. Well, it was awesome. This is weird. I'm going to introduce myself. And I'm actually trying out some new information, trying to make my one-hit wonder talk a little bit broader, bringing in a few more specific elements about food allergy tests. And so I have notes, and so I'm a little self-conscious about having notes, and I'm also holding this. I'm not sure how it's all going to work, but let's just see. Okay. So hi, my name's Shea. And I'm just kidding. So 12-steppers all giggled. So my name is Shea, and I've been doing colon hydrotherapy in Santa Rosa for 10 years. This is going to be really hard. Should I try the headset? No, that's too weird. Okay, so what brought me to a life of doing colon hydrotherapy, loving you guys enough to do that for you for a living, is I grew up in a household that was fairly standard American food. It was on the higher end of standard American food. My mom made a lot of her own food, but it was very much, meat and pasta and just stuff that if you had any kind of food allergies or food sensitivities, you were just getting yourself all ready for a lifetime of reacting to it. I also grew up in a very, very stressful household, very emotionally stressful household. So when I look back on that, it seems like the equivalent of a war zone emotionally on a small child. So I grew up, I'm pretty sure, just like reacting to things and all those self-defense mechanisms that you build to grow up in a household where you're not sure if you can react or how, just very protected. So it's no surprise in this very energetically and emotionally, I'll just say kind of abusive environment and with crappy food that I started turning to food when I was really young as a coping mechanism. My mother was a food addict when I look back on her behaviors, and so I learned a lot of food addict-y behaviors. Like when everyone would go to sleep, I would sneak downstairs and steal cookies or I'd steal things. I learned very early on that if you, my mom would keep cookies wrapped in tinfoil in the freezer and they would say roast. And I learned that if I stole a few, to not totally seal it back up, because then she'd assume my stepfather did it, and she's not about to go approaching my stepfather about stealing her cookies, right? So I just learned how to cover my tracks, blah, blah, blah. And as soon as I got old enough, it went from food to alcohol. And from alcohol, shortly thereafter, drugs were introduced. So I was the typical, if you ever have been to an AA meeting or have been with a friend to an AA meeting, a real common age is when people are telling their drunk-a-log, a real common age is I started drinking at 13. And so when I look back, I really did start drinking at 13. I was smoking, I was stealing packs of cigarettes from my adopted grandpa who lived on the Pall Mall and Filter that lived on the neighborhood, on the street. And it was all coping. When I was 17 years old, I graduated from high school and moved out of the house and in with a 35-year-old boyfriend and started college, which meant, and that was a lot happened in those 3 months, a lot of activity. And so then there was no controls whatsoever at that point. I was just full-blown out of the gates alcoholic at that point. And so obviously while I'm drinking and while I'm doing other substances, food was not an issue for me. I didn't care. This month, it'll be that I'm clean and sober 18 years. No, sorry. But that's big. So clean and sober 18 years. And as soon as I quit drinking, food became an issue. I remember being on my bed, watching TV. It was like less than a month into sobriety, and overeating something, and just the trigger reactions from that, like this food thing that started to happen. So it took me a good 10 years, or a little bit less than 10 years from that point, to start to make the connection that the way I was eating and the way my body was reacting was not normal. Or unfortunately, it is normal. But what's normal? It's like an average of what's happening out in the world. So when you look at how stressed out we all are and how we're all eating, yeah, my body was reacting totally normally for how a body would react under those circumstances. But it was not natural. It was not with ease. So, what was that? An order? Okay, sorry, never mind. So, I think the first sort of personal experience I had with food making a difference in how I felt was I was doing this Candida diet. Were any of you here for the breast health panel? Anybody? A couple people for the... So do you remember Elaine? Do you remember Elaine from the breast health panel? So I worked in 1989. I started working at a women's health care clinic in Santa Rosa that was called Common Women's Health Project, and I was there for 14 years. I'm giving you all this like clues about my age, so don't do the math, just let it go. So I was there a very short period of time before I got sober, and actually that's not true. I was there a few years before I got sober, so those ladies were all really excited when I got sober. But Elaine, a coworker of mine, I was the youngest in this collective of really groovy 30, 40, and 50-year-old kind of hippie ladies that were kind of ushering in this gynecological self-care, birth control kind of environment. And this was like 19, long time ago. And Elaine was, I had just quit drinking and I had all these symptoms, and Elaine was like, we should look at Candida. Well, no one even knew that word. Doctors thought it was a lie. They thought people were just making stuff up. There was like one book out, I think it was The Yeast Connection or The Candida Connection, right? And she put me on what I called the beige diet. You could have nothing white. It was all like brown stuff, like brown rice and brown this and brown that, and hormone-free, antibiotic, meat, I was still eating meat, and all this like really careful stuff. And about 3 or 4 weeks onto it, I had a roommate who said, do you realize that you whistle now? Or do you realize that you're like actually skipping around the house and you're happy? Or do you, And so I started making that correlation that the food I put into my body actually dictated not only my weight, but how my body felt, how my moods were, all of that. And so I was on it for a good 6 or 8 months, and then I went to a birthday party, and when they do that thing where they're making the cake and ice cream plates and everyone's just passing it around in a big circle, like no one really wants to take that first piece, and so those pieces just keep going around. I had the totally perfect alcoholic blackout, and then just inhaled a piece of cake and ice cream, right? Which just flared these Candida reactions again, and I was off and running. Total alcohol metaphors, right? Off and running with sugar again for I don't know how many years, until 1999, probably 10 years later, when I discovered the raw food diet. I was always kind of remembering that there was a connection there, but felt completely powerless to make that change, to like maybe I'd make it a day or two totally white-knuckling it, joking about I have to lock myself in my bedroom to not go to the gas station to buy food. When you're buying gas station food, come on, right? That's what people are relating, though, right? I'm not making a total fool out of myself. So like, if you're shopping at the gas station, you've hit, well, that's one of my rock bottoms with food anyways. But, and I'll worry that the guy's going to think what he's going to think. He's going to think I'm stoned, who cares? You just bought $20 worth of candy from the gas station. So I discovered the raw food diet. I discovered the raw food diet from a book called Cleanse and Purify Thyself by Richard Anderson, who did the Arise and Shine cleanse out of Shasta at that time. And miracles happened. First, how I even discovered that was I was having all kinds of problems: digestive disturbances, mood problems, depression, skin issues.